6 years. That's how long it takes to get through most elementary schools. That's also how much time we have left to stop climate change before it becomes irreversible, according to a recent report by the UN. 6 years. But what does that mean? It means that if we don't take action now and push for the changes necessary to combat the warming of the Earth, there will be major impacts down the road. Sea levels will rise and coastal cities will become uninhabitable. The extinction of key species in crop cultivation will result in global food scarcity. Changing climates will cause animals worldwide and the pathogens they carry to shift around and interact with one another, giving rise to new infectious disease outbreaks, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, that will result in millions of deaths internationally. While the US has made progress in climate change legislation, we still have quite a ways to go. We still remain as a country with the second highest CO2 emissions worldwide, especially in terms of phasing out fossil fuels in favor of advancing clean energy sources such as nuclear energy. Change has come far too slow. When I bring up the word nuclear, most of you might be thinking about nuclear weapons, like those that resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths in World War II, toxic radiation that can lead to cancer, and nuclear reactor failures like Chernobyl and Fukushima. But what if I told you that nuclear energy is one of the safest and greenest sources of energy? What if I told you that it serves as an integral part in our fight against climate change? Today, we will debunk myths, discuss advantages, and advocate for the wider adoption of nuclear energy. Nuclear energy produces no greenhouse gases and is highly efficient, but does have the byproduct of radioactive waste. While this may sound concerning, I'm sure this isn't your biggest fear. Most of you are probably worried about the safety aspect of nuclear power plants and the possibility of a nuclear reactor failure, so let's address those fears first. The first event that probably comes to mind is Chernobyl. It was a devastating event that resulted in 31 immediate deaths and exposed dozens more to toxic radiation. However, investigations have shown that it resulted primarily from improperly trained personnel operating the plant and fundamental flaws in the nuclear reactor's design. 3 Mile Island, another tragedy caused by a nuclear reactor failure, resulted in no immediate deaths, but potentially exposed hundreds to toxic radiation. However, since these events over 35 years ago, there have been numerous improvements that make nuclear power plants much safer. The Institute of Nuclear Power Operations was established to implement adequate training, management, and operations of plants. Technology has developed immensely as well, allowing plants to be better designed and highly automated to reduce human error. Odds of a nuclear reactor failure are astronomically low, with older plants having an estimated chance of 1 failure in 100,000 years of operating, and all newer plants having an estimated chance of 1 failure in 1 million years of operating, if not lower. Now, I'm sure many of you are thinking about Fukushima as well. The cause of the Fukushima Daiichi reactor meltdown was less avoidable, happening as a result of a tsunami and earthquake that struck the plant, disabling its power supply. Fukushima Daiichi was, in fact, only one of 4 plants struck by this natural disaster to have any incident. There are still no confirmed deaths as a result of the reactor failure or the ensuing radiation. A large part of this is due to the improvements in technology that have been made within plants and continue to be made. Further infrastructure has been built to not only protect plants in the event of a natural disaster, but also minimize the effect that a nuclear reactor failure has on the surrounding environment. But I'm sure many of you are still not convinced. So let's take a look at some statistics. This chart compares the amount of deaths caused per 1,000 terawatt-hour of energy generated by energy source. These deaths include those of workers at mines and plants, in addition to civilians who have died as a result of impacts such as lung cancer from the burning of coal or radiation exposure from nuclear reactor failure. If we look at the amount of deaths caused by nuclear, we can see that it comes in at a fraction of nearly every other energy source, sustainable or not. This shows us that nuclear energy is on par with wind and solar safety-wise, and that it doesn't just make sense from an environmental perspective, but also a public health and humanitarian one. But what makes nuclear energy stand out, even among other clean energy sources? The answer is that wind, solar, hydroelectric, and geothermal all have certain limitations that prevent universal application. The first of which is weather and location dependency. Hydroelectric dams, which generate energy through the motion of water, are highly efficient, but are only effective in specific locations under certain conditions. Geothermal plants also pose the same issue, as they're only able to be built in specific locations where volcanic activity is present. Wind and solar possess more flexibility in location, but have the additional issue of weather dependency. This introduces a factor of unreliability, which, coupled with our current post-generation energy storage issues, prevents all of these renewable energy sources from being universally adopted. And while all of these energy sources are sustainable and are no doubt better than fossil fuels, all of them have environmental impacts in some shape or form. Hydroelectric dams disrupt ecosystems. Geothermal plants release greenhouse gases from within the Earth's crust. Large-scale solar implementation requires the clearing of natural habitats, and the blades of decommissioned wind turbines cannot be recycled, resulting in waste. Now, I choose to share this information with you not to paint these renewable energy sources in a negative light, but to provide the context for the negative impacts of nuclear energy. No source of clean energy is perfect, and despite this, fossil fuels and greenhouse gas-emitting energy sources have a tremendously greater negative environmental impact than all sustainable energy sources. One of the only drawbacks of nuclear energy is that it produces radioactive waste in the form of spent uranium rods. This is often equated to public health issues and environmental damage by critics. However, any negative effects that these processes may have are greatly minimized by the strict and effective regulation of every aspect of radioactive waste by the US government. Up until this point, we've talked about how nuclear energy provides huge environmental and public health benefits. But ultimately, nuclear energy is also an economical choice. Its costs per amount of energy generated are on par or better than most other sustainable energy sources. Plants can be built pretty much anywhere, making them suitable for adoption in most places around the country and world. They also have no weather dependency, able to generate energy consistently regardless of outside conditions. However, one of the most outstanding characteristics of nuclear energy is its land use efficiency. This chart compares the amount of land used in square meters per megawatt hour of energy generated annually by energy source. We can see that once again, nuclear energy stands out, coming in at a fraction of every other energy source. The data in this chart not only accounts for physical plants themselves, but also the mines used to harvest radioactive isotopes and the disposal of spent rods, making it evident that nuclear energy is the most land-efficient energy source by far. Many nations around the world, including the US, are failing to reach goals set by the Paris Agreement. Climate change and global warming are showing no signs of slowing down. If we don't act now, there will be major impacts down the road, not just for biodiversity, but for the human race, which is already evident in the increased frequency and intensity of natural disasters. So what can you do to help push for changes in US policymaking to enhance nuclear energy? The first thing is start conversations. Whether it's with your parents at the dinner table or with friends, raising awareness about the capabilities of nuclear energy is a simple step you can take to do your part. Next, advocate. Put pressure on local policymakers and support nuclear activism groups such as Californians for Green Nuclear Energy and Third Way. Third, vote. While many of you may not be able to vote yet, you are still the next generation of voters. So when your time comes, make educated decisions when choosing politicians on a local, state, and national level. Lastly, continue to educate yourselves, both about climate change and nuclear energy, to make informed decisions within your personal life. Today, we have learned how nuclear energy provides huge environmental benefits, but that is also the second safest energy source and the #1 best choice for land use efficiency. Nuclear energy isn't the perfect solution, but it is one of the best we have right now. It's clean, reliable, sustainable, and versatile, making it a key cog in the clean engine powering our fight against climate change. Thank you.